Coin traders, how we doing? Thanks for joining me for the show. We are looking at decentralized social, DESO, DESO on that ticker. A new one for the channel, but if you have been following me here over on Twitter or X, I have been talking about it a bunch, and you probably know that it is one of my favorite for smaller market caps for this upcoming cycle. So if you do want to stay updated on all future talks on decentralized social, DESO, make sure you do drop me a follow over here on Twitter or X. At @coin_trades is the handle. Looking forward to chatting with everyone over there for all things decentralized social. So today, right now, having a very, very nice upside day, especially after a long period of basically a huge breakdown after more or less a consolidation along this big level that started back at the start of January. So big, long pullback, and now finally seeing a big rebound day over 20%. At the peak, we were looking at almost 30%. So yeah, 36%, but obviously quick sell-off. And now we are getting a lot more of this upper wick, which is pretty standard. Every time we do get these rallies, we notice we see a lot of the sell-off pressure come in for DESO. And so unfortunately, that's just kind of how it is right now. And we don't really expect that to kind of stay too often, but nonetheless, a lot of big price volatility coming in, especially nice, good bullish volume on the day. But we know that we are getting stuck up right now on this exponential moving average band. So if we actually turn off the 50 period EMA right now, then we are going to be looking at essentially a very nice zone for this pullback. So in between 12 and 26, you can see a lot of selling pressure coming in. So path of least resistance to the downside. So on the current candle right now, trying to hold a break and close above that 26. So we do have about just over an hour left on the current daily candle. Obviously, a lot of selling pressure coming in as indicated by this upper wick, but we do know that the body is still a lot larger than the upper wick, so that's still a pretty good sign. So if we can hold a close on top of this level, it's going to be a good sign as well, especially if on the following day, we can see continued action and follow through, especially a nice bullish candle. My expectation and anticipation is actually getting a little bit of an inside bar pattern for next couple of days, though. Kind of like what we have seen back on all these previous bull spikes from all these sell-off moves. So looking at a pullback, nice bullish day, and then obviously a little bit of inside bars happening here, and obviously these sell-off bars and bodies inside the body of the previous bullish day. So that could still be something that we experience, even if we do get a few days of sell-off. That would be something that we would experience, is a few days of sell-off inside the body of this bullish candle here coming in. So that's not to say that that wouldn't happen, since we have seen it previous times before. But also, if we do want to talk about some upside resistances, plenty of resistances up overhead, which is another reason why we have actually gotten stuck up at this level so far and seen a little bit of the sell-off. So looking at closing support, if we do look left, closing support, closing support, closing support, closing support, and then closing resistance, closing resistance. So now on the current daily candle, normal and expected to see that as closing resistance. So big band and zone here coming in for closing resistance from 30.58 all the way up to 31.63. So since we got up to a high of 33.35 on the daily, despite having a rejection from this big zone of resistance, that's another reason why we do need to hold a break and close bullish on top of this 26 period EMA. So once again, 26 period EMA is at 29.06. So since we're at 29.61, it is going to be close with just like I said, just a little bit over an hour left on this candle. But so otherwise, we are still going to maintain this big resistive zone in between the 12 and 26 period EMA. So that's not necessarily going to be the best sign, but hopefully in that instance, we would see follow on to have a second attempt at breaking not only the resistance from the 26 period EMA, but also this big resistive zone that, like we said, has been resistance, and then also big period of previous support when we did actually find our current trend high right now. Okay, so do want to flip over into the weekly chart now. A lot of good things actually to talk about this long-term weekly chart, and specifically do want to kind of look back to the left here, how we were looking at big resistances all up in this exponential moving average zone. Finally broke bullish on top of 12 and 26 and got resistance and stuck up at the 50 period EMA, but sideways bars kicked off the 12 and then had a nice big rally, maintained 12 period moving average support, EMA 12 moving support, exponential moving average support anyway for these 12 period EMA on the weekly. Finally broke it, but now, just like we saw previous resistance coming in at the 50, now we're seeing closing support on this weekly for the 50 period EMA. Long lower shadows on these that are very much bigger than the magnitude of these bodies coming in. So even if prices do stay the same or even dip potentially slightly, we are still looking at huge magnitude of these long lower shadows. So even with just over 2 days left on this weekly candle, we're looking at an upside shadow of about 20% to the downside. We are looking at about 17. So very good support being found right now in between the 26 and 50 period EMA. So a lot of dip buying. And if we do zoom out and look left, looking at a big point of closing level resistance, which didn't even come close to where we were looking at for support, but just above that was price level resistance at 24.57, which did provide extremely nice support and also aligns pretty well with what we're seeing for this 50 period EMA. So big level of price support coming in for DESO right now at that point at 24.57. Also looking to the left, big period of support, kind of what we're finding right now based off closing level of support coming off of the initial launch. For that, we're looking at 30.06. So right now are seeing that as a point of resistance as well. So that's another reason why we can hopefully break up and rally above that level. If we do go ahead and look at the volume over the last 6 weeks when we have seen the sell-off pretty much coming from a high of 45 all the way down to our trend lows. And even if we do look at the overall pullback right now that we have experienced at a DESO just shy of a $50 high coming in down to 23, pullback for that's about 53%. So kind of in line with what we see for the rest of crypto. Now, based on current prices, we would be looking at a pullback of about 40%. So still pretty nice right now. So if we do look at the volume decrease in selling pressure, obviously this happened in kind of 2 chunks, but more or less still looking at an overall taper off in the selling pressure over the last 6 weeks for DESO. So now being able to see some nice bullish volume coming in, especially after defending support, pretty good sign and a very good bottom and kind of indicator that we're going to start to see at a minimum some longer term weekly consolidation coming in. But my expectation is probably a rally back above the $30 level and breaking that $31 and $32 resistance. So on this weekly closing level resistance, we're looking at 33.35. So big period of closing support coming in and all of these long lower shadows that you can see as well. This is also the period that we did reject off of on the current candle when we did have this nice move. So still getting a little bit of this upside wick, but like we said, plenty of resistance on top based on previous support levels that have broken. So now to see this as a big point of resistance as well is nothing to shy and fret about. So now, especially if we can continue to see increasing bullish volume coming in, then that's going to be a good sign, and we will have our next level and establishing our weekly higher low. So looking at a Fibonacci on this weekly from the low before we hit our current trend high right now, really good setup on this weekly because the 61.8 actually aligns with the 50 period EMA and where we have found support, which also is where we did find our previous level of price resistance. So all very significant levels for this price coming in at 24.20. And again, this is the 61.8% Fibonacci. So very nice to retrace and actually find some support on the 61.8. Hopefully now a little bit more upside direction. And like we can see on the chart, going to get stuck up kind of around the 38.2 and then also the 23.6. Not necessarily perfect levels, but overall you can see how they are extremely relevant still. And so the main thing right now is going to be breaking above the 38.2 as well as this 12 period EMA, because especially it aligns with the previous levels of resistance as also this previous level of closing support. So big struggle zone coming up overhead, but I think that it's definitely reasonable and fair for the bulls to think, especially with a lot of upside pressure out of the rest of the crypto space, that it is going to happen here pretty soon and that we've already found our bottom for a DESO. Now, I do want to jump into CoinMarketCap rankings, and like I've talked about on Twitter and X, I do think that Decentralized Social DESO is one of my big favorite picks for smaller market caps. So we're looking at just over 264 million with an M. That does put the market cap ranking at number 230 right now. So plenty of potential to see a lot of upside gains, especially out of such a powerhouse L1 blockchain like DESO. Now, circulated supply on this is actually wrong. We're more in the 10 million range. So total supply, 10 million, 10.8 million. And right now, this is based on proof of work, but we are switching to the Revolution proof of stake here in the upcoming couple months. So first, we are looking at Revolution proof of stake hitting testnet here, supposedly this month or early in May. And then May/June is when we see the rollout on mainnet for Revolution proof of stake. Now, if you do want me to do a deeper dive into the fundamentals of DESO, the L1 blockchain, and then also Focus, the new social media project coming out on DESO, definitely drop me a note in the comments sections below or reach out over on Twitter or X. I know a lot of people aren't necessarily familiar with DESO just yet, so do think it would be a great opportunity for everyone to learn about this just crazy, insane, and great L1 blockchain that we do have coming out with the intent for decentralized social media and a lot of other great use cases. Okay, so do want to pull up technical indicators for DESO right now. Specifically want to look at stochastic RSI because we've had a very nice top smashed up against the 100 line for a long time before finally finding this nice sloping pullback. And as you can see, we had a nice spread on both of these lines on the stochastic RSI, and then finally now having our bottom and our very nice bullish cross. So since we were smashed up against the 0 line right at the bottom here for DESO, we know that there is a lot of bullish upside pressure now, especially given the fact that we have been bouncing off of a lot of these lower supports and also now had our bullish cross, and we should experience a little bit more upside pressure and direction out of the stochastic RSI. Now, looking at the RSI itself, had a big overbought level for a long period of time. So we went from 88 all the way up to a high of 94.85. So it was normal to think that we were going to be experiencing a pullback. So especially after losing 12-period EMA that was support for so long, this pullback was expected, and it kind of is fitting that it did align with the rest of the pullback for the crypto space right now. So perfect opportunity and setup and a lot of great things out of DESO. So has been frustrating being patient over the last 6-7 weeks, but obviously now starting to get a little bit of upside pressure, especially after a confirmation of this bottom, is a very good sign. So other confirmation signals, not only since we are seeing a big resistance break, but also a lot of volume on this bounce. So that's one of the things that we are looking for, as long as we do get that continuation and follow through. Otherwise, this big resistance point on the daily at 3060 is going to be still intact, and we are still going to have to basically look for the next downside leg and be able to confirm that higher low. But because we were holding this daily level of support at 2367, especially now being able to find one solid daily candle that has pretty much taken out all of this bearish downside from that level, has been a good sign as well. And so if we do flip over now into the 4-hour, for example, this is very typical for kind of what we see out of this type of move, because this is one of those cryptos where we see a lot of quick volume and upside gains, but then we also have pretty quick sell-off. So that's why it is going to come down to being able to establish some supports, and otherwise expect a lot more of that volatility coming in for DESO. Okay, so don't that often switch over into the 2-week chart. Did pull up the 2-week chart here. A couple of things to talk about before we actually wrap up. And one of the good things is that we're now in a fully bullish formation, especially since this chart is new. Haven't necessarily had that long to form the 50-period EMA. Finally formed it and now still sitting bullish, 12, 26, and now 50 on bottom. So one of the good things is obviously, like we talked about, this lower shadow, just finding a lot of support on this 26 and 50-period EMA. Right now, still finding a little bit of resistance on the 12-period EMA for this 2-week chart, coming in at 29.79. So hopefully this can be something that breaks as well. And this is kind of just another indication that the $29 to $31 level is going to be an extremely big point of resistance since we have fallen below it. But if and when we actually do see bulls break and close above that level, that's just going to be an extremely good and bullish sign. And I would expect a lot of upside action after that. And then another test and run of some of these current trend highs right now, just based on how this current chart setup is, based on a run up, a very nice consolidation, slight pullback, maintaining longer weekly structure. And then from there, we typically expect the next leg of upside, or at a very minimum, a little bit more consolidation, forming this phase E on a Wyckoff before that phase E breakouts. Excuse me, this is the phase D before the phase E breakout. So yeah, I think a lot of great things right now on this chart. So you can even see that in between the 12 and the 26 period EMA, since we were looking at it as a big resistive zone here prior to what we're seeing currently, now has flipped and now is acting as that very big supportive zone, since we have flipped bullish and now we're in a bullish formation after holding this zone as that big resistive levels. Just one really quick Moonboy type of prediction based on an extension. So if we do look from the low up to the current trend high right now at 50 down to the swing low, the 100 extension level would be at 62.32. Above that, we would be looking at the 1.618 at 86.32. Following that, the 2.618 at 125. And above that would be the 3.618 at 164, finally finishing out this big level at 426, which is 188.14. So typically we find in these big bull markets that, especially from this type of setup, when we do wait for our phasey breakout, that the 4.236 is easily achievable for that type of breakout on these strong bullish markets. So I would expect and anticipate that ultimately we could see a very strong price level, at least in this zone from 164 to 188. So if we do look at that in terms of a price growth, we would be looking at 400 to all the way up 500%. So essentially a 5 to 6 to 7x out of DESO, just based on that prediction from those Fibonacci extension levels. If we do look out from the current, we were looking at a high of 187. So that would be a previous attempt at forming a new blue sky breakout price discovery into that all-time high. All right, so yeah, that is going to go ahead and wrap it up for Decentralized Social, DESO, DESO on that ticker. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe. My intent is definitely to do a lot more of these DESO analysis videos, especially since it's one of my favorites for the smaller cap predictions for this upcoming cycle. And I do really believe in this L1 blockchain as well, since it is just such fire, and we do have a lot of great things coming out for it here soon. So yeah, definitely drop me a note in the comments sections below if you want me to do more of a fundamental type analysis video on DESO, DESO. But otherwise, make sure you do hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe if you have not done so just yet. Make sure you are dropping me a follow over on Twitter as well at coin_trades. But otherwise, do appreciate all the continued love and support. It does mean so much. Stay safe, take care, everyone, and I'll catch you back in the next video.